Hi there, I'm Daisy from Daisy Viktoria, and today I'm going to teach you how to take some measurements. So whether you are having a custom garment made for you, or whether you're making something for yourself or a friend or anyone, it's very important to have proper measurements so that the garments fit. So today I'm going to show you with my mannequin here as my helper. Now, a tip in taking measurements is that while you can measure yourself, it's much better to have a friend there to help you. So I'm going to be her friend today. So another tip before we get started is that you really want to have this flexible tape measure. It's pretty standard for sewing and craft projects. I'll go over at the end of the video a hack you can do if you don't have one, but I do highly recommend you go ahead and purchase this one for your best results. And then another tip for you before we get started is what you're wearing when you get measured. So typically you want to wear whatever undergarments you're going to be wearing with the garment you're making or having made. So today my friend is going to get her measurements taken. And I'm going to go over a pretty complete list with you just so you got them all. So one measurement that is very common is from your shoulder to the floor. So you'll just line your tape measure up so that it goes all the way down to the floor, and then go ahead and read off that measurement. Now you may be asked to take shoulder to hemline. So say you've got a shorter dress, just make sure that you pull the tape measure up to wherever that is before taking this measurement. So the next one is another height measurement from your waist to the floor. Now, I'm going to have a tip for finding your proper waistline, which my mannequin doesn't do so well herself. But if you are not quite sure where your waist is, if you just bend like this, that spot where you see that bend is your natural waistline. So that's what you're going to use as the height point for this measurement. So just like the other one, you want to go down to the floor and read off whatever that measurement is right there. And again, if you're asked for waist to hem, make sure that you bring the tape measure up a little bit higher to wherever that hemline is going to fall. So those are the two main height requirements, other than if you want to measure your total overall height. Now we're going to get to some torso measurements. So bust is a very common one. So you want to measure around the bust, and my mannequin here has long hair, which happens sometimes. So make sure you get your long hair out of the way of that measurement. Now when you do this, you want to make sure that your tape measure is parallel to the floor, which is a little easier on a human than a mannequin. But I think you can see what I'm doing here. So when you read this measurement, it's easiest to get an accurate measurement from the side rather than the front. So you just read that measurement right off there. Now the next one that we're going to take is the under bust. This is typically where your bra band will sit. It's going to be right below your boobs. So you're going to have this just on your rib cage, and that's why bra companies will use this to determine the rib cage measurement. So once again, make sure that you're measuring parallel to the ground and go ahead and read that number. So the next one is the waist measurement. Now this is the one, remember, if you're not quite sure where your smallest point of your waist is, or it doesn't really work out that it's the smallest point, go ahead and go like this and find that spot. So once again, if you go from the side, it's going to be the easiest to get that accurate measurement. So once you've got these, there is a hip measurement. Now sometimes you'll be asked for a high hip, which is about where your pants sit around your pelvic bone. That one is not nearly as common as the full hip. So if you want to get the high hip, just kind of find your pelvic bone there and read that measurement off, and I'm not exactly straight, that's a little bit better there. Now the full hip measurement is the most common hip measurement, and that's going to be taken just like it sounds around the fullest part of your hip, So all the way around where your butt makes that like jutting out portion. This is really important because when you're making something, you want to know, what is the largest that you need to make that. So go ahead and read that one off right there. Okay, so those are our main girth measurements of our torso. Sometimes we'll be asked for measurements of the length of our torso. There are actually a few you might need. So you might need to go from shoulder to bust. In that case, go ahead and just measure that length there from the shoulder down to your bust line. And remember, this is always where you measured these measurements. So you might also need bust to under bust. That's going to get really tricky, obviously going over the curve of the breast. So you want to do that kind of off to the side here where you don't have so much to change what the measurement would be. And then another one might be under bust to waist. Alternately, it could be bust to waist. So again, go from wherever you found your waist and just measure up to your under bust or your bust as desired. Another one will be waist to hip. So make sure you find wherever you went around for that hip measurement and then measure just up to the waist there. So the next measurement you may need is your shoulders. The width of your shoulders is typically measured from where your shoulders rotate. So if you just kind of go like this, you can figure out where that point is if you have any question about it. So we're going to measure across here on her. Now sometimes you may be asked to do this in the front and the back, and you may find that it's slightly different. So if you're asked to do it in the back, go ahead and just do it across the back as well. So next we're going to move on to our arms. So we will typically want an arm length. That will be very important, just like the height measurements that we took earlier. So to get arm length, you want to measure again from that point where your arm rotates at the top down to your wrist. Now notice that this measurement is going to change when you bend your elbow, like so. Now, when you give these measurements to someone else or you use them yourself, make sure you know whether you had your arm bent or not, because that'll make a difference. So the next one is going to be the bicep. Now to get the bicep, you just want to find the widest part of your arm and measure around, just like that. The elbow is another important one, and notice when you bend it, it gets a little bit wider than when you don't bend it. It's very important to have the full width bent because you want your sleeves to fit over your arm even when you bend it. So again, just measure like we've been doing. You may be asked for your forearm, especially if you have very muscly forearms, which I do not. That might be very important. So go ahead and measure around there if required. Another typical one is the wrist. So you're just going to measure right around your wrist there. There may be other lengths required. For example, you may go from your shoulder to your elbow, and that could give you a length needed for some projects. You may also go from your wrist up to your elbow. So that's it for our arm. And there may be a couple of leg measurements needed. So you may need to do your thigh, for example, in which case you'll want to find the largest part around your thigh. So we'll just pretend it's right here for her, and we'll go ahead and read off that measurement. Now, what's below our screen here are her calves and her ankles. You may also be asked for those, and just like we did the arm, just go ahead and go right around the calf at the largest point and the ankle at the smallest point. Another thing that may be important for the legs is the inseam. So with pants, you have an inseam that comes up here to the crotch of your pants. So you want to measure whether it's from the floor or from the hem of your pants. Make sure you put the tape measure in that spot. And then you want to measure up here to where your crotch is. Similarly, you may be asked for an out seam. It's like the inseam, but on the outside. So same thing. You would just measure up to where you want the top of your pants to go. Another measurement you may be asked to take is your back length. So I'm going to go ahead and turn her around here so you can see. Now when taking the back length, this is typically measured from the bottom of your neck down to your waist. If it's any different, just make sure you do what's specified. So we'll just go ahead and measure that length right there. So that's pretty much your standard body measurements. Another one that you might need sometimes, especially when constructing your own garments, is the arm side. Now this is a tricky one because it can actually vary based on the garment. So to get sort of a minimum, you can measure right around the arm like that, and that's the minimum arm side that you need. Now typically you need it larger than that so you can actually move your arm. So just go ahead and drop the tape measure down to wherever you want it. So for example, if you have a shirt you like that's got a good arm side, you could put that on and measure where that is. So that takes care of our body measurements. The next one I'm going to show you is the neck. So when measuring your neck, make sure you go around the full portion of your neck, not right up here by your chin. So I'm just going to go ahead and measure her neck right there around the full portion of the neck. So if you're having something made for your head, say a hat or a headpiece of some type, you may need head measurements. The first one is going to go around the crown of your head and get the width of your head. So just kind of make sure you've got this around the forehead and read off that measurement up there. Another important head measurement is going to be to show the height of your head, so just around your face. So go ahead and take that tape measure up under your chin and measure that full circumference there. Okay, so those are all your basic measurements. I hope you guys have learned something, and I'm gonna go ahead and show you that hack I promised in case you don't have a flexible tape measure. So you can get away with measuring these using a piece of string. You want to make sure your string isn't gonna stretch a lot, and that's the good thing about these guys, they don't stretch. So if you have a piece of string, you can go ahead and measure around using that string and mark where it is. You're gonna need something to actually measure the number of that measurement. So if you have an industrial tape measure sitting around, you can go ahead and use that. So you can just take your piece of string, lay it out a little better on the floor or a table, and go ahead and read what that is. Now to do that, you do need something that's long enough to take the measurements around your body. And honestly, I do recommend that you go ahead and get one of these. You're investing a lot of time and money into making garments and or having garments made for you. It's well worth your time and the very minimal investment to pick up one of these guys. All right, that's it for taking measurements. I hope you guys have learned a lot, and I look forward to seeing what you have made for you, what you have me make for you, and what you make for yourselves and your friends. So please be sure to share with me. And if you want to see some more of my work, which I make all the time by taking these measurements on myself and others, you can check out daisyviktoria.com. And I hope that you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.